Yes, I'll be there. No?
Mamy jednak chętnie.
Tak, dobra, już właśnie go odpalam się. Hello everyone, I'm so glad that you came to my lecture. I see new faces. My name is Marta Szarzyńska and I'm a producer of a movie called Songs of Love, about love. And I planned that today's time will be, that this hour will be consisting of two parts. One of them will be a case study of the Songs of Love, where very shortly I will tell you about how it happened and how we produced that movie. And in the second part, I wanted to get you acquainted with Microbudget program, thanks to which we managed to produce Songs of Love. It will be okay. Let's make a short introduction. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them later. We have new people. Will somebody be applying for Microbudget this year? It's until the mid of November, I think. So maybe later we'll be talking about that if you're okay with that. Because the selection process is a sort of a specific Songs of Love. Have you seen the Songs of Love? Have you seen the movie? Nobody, apart from you. That's interesting. But you've heard about this production. I'm really glad, and I really encourage you to see it. Hi, girls. The Songs of Love are available on VOD on the website of our distributor Gutek Film. And how did this happen? Well, let's start from the end. This picture shows it's the last filming day. We're very lucky. We've managed to get to the end. We've managed to do the filming during the pandemic. So that was a big challenge for us. I'll start from the guy in the middle, Tomek Chabowski, who was the director and the author of songs. When I was telling about this movie in the microbudget context, I was underlining from the very start that microbudgeting, we can talk about microbudgeting in terms of production and not development. So, for me, all the stages are important, but development is extremely important in film production, because it shows whether a movie or a script is viable to be forwarded to the next stages. And Tomek did the development, and it took him 5 years. What does it mean? He was working on a script of Songs of Love. Of course, he was a musician himself, and at some festival, he had this idea. Oh, he didn't graduate from any film school, just like me. He was studying law, and I don't think he graduated. And he started to get interested in writing and the movies. And these, I would say, the first kernel of the idea for the movie, he took with him to Wajda's film school. And then during the next 2 years, first during the script writing course, and then during the directing course, he was developing his idea. So what I got, the script which did not have the finish yet, but it was already a developed script, a script which read fantastically. This whole work was done before the text landed on my desk. So as we say in our industry, that the film production takes more or less 3 to 5 years. Taking into account the fact that we received the money in 2020, we applied in 2019. In 2020, we got the money. We did the first. We sort of went on the filming set, and it was like then 1.5 year. But you have to take into account that this work that led this text to production was done before, and not only by Tomasz, but also Ola Kułakowska also had a part in this, a great producer who's also a director right now, and who sent me the script of the Songs of Love and the presentation. Tomasz and Ola met, I think, in Wajda's school, and that's where they started to work together on the Songs of Love. And the end point was when they decided to submit this project for development in PISF. They didn't get the money. The committee rejected that project. There was Krzysztof Zanussi in the committee. They decided that two beginners, because Ola would be a beginner in a full feature film, and Tomasz would be a full feature film beginner, that they won't be able to handle such a big project. So when this project wanted to follow like a standard route, it was cancelled, sort of. So they went their own ways. So they parted ways. Ola sent me the text. She said that I have to read that. I met her in Kraków in off camera, and I remember that I was reading this text on my way to Korea. I went to the Busan festival, and already on the plane, I was so excited. This plane was sort of flying for ages for me, and I really wanted to call this guy to say I want to meet with him. I didn't think about this movie as a micro-budget film at all. Also, the script didn't indicate that it should be a micro-budget movie. There was plenty of concert scenes. It seemed as if showing that world of the Polish music scene requires quite a lot of money. And only when we started to talk about it with Tomek, it occurred that and here I'm sort of answering your questions in a way, he submitted as a person without a film school. He submitted an application with his portfolio, with explication. It's a process for all the people who didn't graduate from the film school, with the acceptance of the director of the institute, with the request to submit this application in a micro-budget process. I'm not sure how the acceptance process takes place. Probably there's some committee that accepts their portfolio. The problem with Tomek was that he didn't have any portfolio apart from the fact that he was in these two courses and that he was a scriptwriter. In Wajda's film school. He wrote very well, and somebody took him to cooperate in working on a Polish TV show. And so, long story short, the Film Institute agreed to submit, and this is where we started the discussion. That was a fact already. We were going for we sort of had to go for a micro budget then. So it looked like this. It was a production which assumed the participation of the Polish TV broadcaster in the financing structure, and the budget was 700,000. The whole of the film budget was 700,000 zlotys. It's about 1 million zlotys in today's money. The enthusiasm this enthusiasm when we got the money, for me, it made all the problems disappear. Apparently, it was my first full feature movie. For Tomek, it was the first full feature movie. So for plenty of our crew, it was the last movie. The first movie. So we had plenty of newbies in this, and I'm so happy and I'm so glad that this is what it looked like. I'll tell you why this was a good thing, and why I thought it's very valuable from the producer's perspective. There was no pandemic. We didn't think about the problems. We got the money, and we said, "Wow, let's go. Let's do it." So January and February, it occurred in February that pandemic is coming. These were very difficult months when we had to develop this project very slowly. Our first discussion that we held with Tomek, which took ages when we got to meet each other, resulted in me having some sort of questions and some different vision of this script. And it seemed that this movie is about Alice, the protagonist, the female protagonist, the girl. Tomek was convincing me that he wants to make a movie about Robert, the antagonist. And this showed that the script needs a bit of a transformation in order to show, to develop Alicia a bit more. It was fantastic, even though Tomek is writing fantastic script. He's a very good writer. We invited Ania Bielak, a script doctor, to cooperate with us, and who, after a few meetings, they developed together. They managed to reduce several scenes which were talking about Alice. This was very important for me because every scene deleted or reduced was reducing our set time. So we calculated that with the budget we can have only 15 to 16 shooting days, which for beginners is a huge challenge. It's very little time. Usually, full feature movies are made within 20 something days. In this case, it occurred that it will not be just a limitation of a budget, limited our set time or time on the filming set. It's April, middle of pandemics. We don't know what to do. We're casting. The whole industry is sort of frozen. It's paralyzed. We, with other producers, we are trying to get a bonus, an additional money from Polish Film Institute, like this COVID bonus, as they called it, for the purchase of all the things that we needed due to COVID, like the face masks, etc., etc. We calculated that it will take 20,000-30,000 in a budget, and we didn't get the bonus. So we had to think how to do it. We have new unexpected costs and how to deal with the situation. I must tell you that this was a very difficult time. And the time when only this good energy on the project slowly was pushing this forward. And then we decided, it was I think July, August, we already had the casting done. We already had the actors confirmed. So Alicja, Krystyna Święcka, Paweł Soka, Andrzej Grabowski, who joined us later in the process, I think in August. And we knew that we want to make that movie during the autumn. We cannot wait for the next spring. And the terms and conditions of micro-budgeting projects allow us 1.5 years for making of a movie. We knew we were obliged to have the premiere in Gdynia in 2021. That was also a very good decision to perform the shooting, to produce the film in October. The biggest problem was the fact that we didn't have the money on our accounts. So that is another thing that we didn't expect. The schedule of micro-budget envisaged that the contract will be signed until such and such day, but due to the fact that because we have a TV broadcaster, that I need to sign the first contract with the broadcaster, and only then with the Polish Film Institute, because of the COVID related problems, the TV broadcaster was not able to sign the contract on time. So we signed this contract finally after 80% of the filming set was done. I got the first money in December. We had the last shooting. The last filming day was on the 19th of December. We went through all the problems and limitations related to budget. And it was very stressful, and I was very, very grateful, and I'll be grateful to the whole crew because they were very helpful. There's nothing more stressful for the producer that he's in debt, he has $500,000 of debt, and he owes money to the people, the crew, etc. So that was a very stressful situation. Right now, due to the fact that these situations, that there's no Polish TV in the financing structure, I think this is much simpler. I was not talking to the producers from the previous years. I don't know how they managed to do that, but every difficult situation with which you have to tackle, it's a lesson too. So it showed me that how cash flow of a project is important. And I do understand very well producers who do not decide to start filming before the full financing is in place. I already said to my group earlier, don't be so scared. It happens, but it's not a rule. There are situations like that. But you always have to get ready in some way to a situation when the process of signing a contract takes time. So we got through this most difficult part. I have a few photos from previews. Let me come back to the fact that this movie was made just by the beginners. Of course, we are not pure greenhorns. We had people who had some experience, but I told you that it's very important. For me, that was important because very quickly it occurred that persons for whom it is a first movie have a very high stake in the production of this movie. For all of us, it was something that was to define us in this industry. We didn't know about that when I look at it from this perspective, but we gave 200% of our efforts, each one of us. Alicja Zachodny, who is She used to be an interior designer. That was her first movie. She entered the set a week before the production started, and she worked marvelously. She's working on the second or third season of a high budget series, and her future looks very rosy. Kamil Krzysztof, who made the music for the movie. For Justyna Święcek, that was also a debut. It was her first full feature movie, first main role, and I think an interesting person that also appeared on our team was our coach, who helped Justyna to prepare for the role. Justyna I forgot now. Was it Ania Skorupa? They had several meetings before entering the set just to get prepared to play that character, and that was a cost that we didn't take into account in the budget. But I felt that it has to be introduced so that everybody feels well during the set, so that Justyna feels that she, in this role, with so few filming days, we had like 16 altogether. You have to. Her character had to be her character had to be built before, you know. It was very important that the COVID appeared now on the set, because we had to stop filming the worst on the worst of possible days, because that was the day when we had a lot of extras. And I do not have a picture from that. I don't have a picture from that day, but it was a day when we were shooting in Spativ. And it occurred where you also had to pay for your presence, etc. These were things that we could not foresee, and this is also a lesson for me, including apart from cash flow. Another one is you should have contingency. 10% of your budget should always be for contingency situations. It doesn't matter whether it's COVID, whatever happens, you always should have a reserve, a 10% reserve. You should always have a 10% margin for error, so that it's your safety buffer. Do you have any questions, by the way, at this point to the sort of description of this production? Concerning the cash flow, because you were saying that you agreed with the crew. You said, okay, when I get the money, you will receive it. This happens quite often, unfortunately. And what about the rental of locations? Because sometimes you have to pay up front. I'm very glad you mentioned the locations, because this is a very important thing. Imagine that we were shooting that movie in Warsaw, so the cost of locations are much higher, but we've managed to organize this set in such a way that some of the locations we had them from friends. The Robert's apartment, we rented that out from the friends of Tomek. We tried to play it in such a way so that we could borrow these places rather than rent them out. So, for example, we were looking for an office. We got a suggestion of a location manager for a place that would cost us 10,000 zlotys, and I knew we can't afford that. That's very important for the producers to be aware, not only for the producers but for the whole crew, that at this moment we cannot rent out a location which costs 12,000 zlotys if I had 30,000 zlotys for all the locations. So rational management of what you have is very important, and sort of squeezing and putting out all sorts of costs that you do not have to cover. This production really taught me how to save money. And of course, I had to have some money. Thankfully, I had some other project, and I could borrow money from the other project, the money that I had to pay at this moment. But in reality, we tried to, for whatever it takes, we try to cut costs. Andrzej Jaroszyński's apartment, so the character played by Andrzej Grabowski, I found it on Facebook in the locations tab. This production was also very difficult because we didn't have enough persons in the production department. I did a lot of things myself, and this awareness of where we are in the budget, having in mind that this was not a classical production. We're looking at the end of the week. I mean, I had to know every day how much money was spent to which and how much money is left in my budget. So starting from the very outset, I remember we were talking with Tomek about it. It was very helpful that we set certain limits. How many people can earn for the heads of departments in a given department? We decided. We said we put in equal engagement. Of course, the length of work of a scriptwriter or a director is different from the person who entered the set, but we just had to keep to the rule that everybody is remunerated more or less the same. And that so we try to sort of borrow money. We try to give sort of juggle cash flow. It was very difficult for many people in the set because, of course, the crew below the line it did not. I mean, they didn't want to go down from the on their fees. I would say. We had to pay them the market fee, the market rate. So we had to take that all into account, like the gaffers and the other people who were related to production per se. When you have a threatened cash flow, is it a standard practice to take bank loans, or are you looking for alternatives? Thank you, a great question. Let me tell it like this. If my company at that time was operating already for 1 year, so I didn't have any credit score. After the pandemics, in the times of inflation, it is much more difficult, especially if I have any sort of cash flow, if I have any projects. I know the Polish Chamber of Audiovisual Producers had a great initiative of analyzing our market, what are the real revenues, how much our market generates, so that we can get from the banks a certain guarantee, credit guarantees during the project. Because imagine a situation like this. When the contract is already signed, this cash gets it on your account, but maybe, for example, you would be able to get the confirmation of financing, and basing on this confirmation, receive some loan with low interest. But right now in our country, and I know it's very different in other countries, in our country, unfortunately, there are no mechanisms like that. Of course, if a company has great revenues, they make a lot of projects and they have a lot of turnover, no problem with that. My company was new, fresh, so that was quite difficult. Here, I was not let down by my friends. Thank you for your question. So if you send this contract so late, you made this assumption that the contract will be signed, or did you have at the back of your head, did you have any form of guarantee? Did you think that this signing of a contract could have been cancelled? Did you have any sort of certainty? Were you prepared that this process will take so long? I'm sure only that we will all die. That's the only thing I'm sure of. But I don't know about other stuff. I hoped everything will work well, but there were voices, that pandemic, etc. I tried not to think about it. I focused on action, and I hope that this will take place sooner or later. But it was a lot of risk, and I didn't want to get through the same level of stress again and through such burden, especially financial burden. Thankfully, I do not have a lot of assets, so my bankruptcy would not be meaning taking everything away from me. As I told you, Bob Dylan said, "When you've got nothing to lose." So I was just following Bob Dylan in this case. But I was also supported by the crew, by Tomek, by everybody, and I could say to them, I could tell them, this is the place I am at, and I'm happy that they were understanding. I know that I was not the only person in that situation. Other producers, I think one project resigned from, they was cancelled out of the 7 projects that got the micro budget during that time. Do you have any other questions? I have one question. When it comes to when you were preparing the budget outline, did you sort of divide it into the scriptwriter into scenes, into finding out what are the cost items? Did you define at this stage that this, a building in Warsaw costs, I don't know, 10,000 or 5,000? Was it like this, or rather? You decided we have 700,000, so 25 will go for the location, and then this is what I have to get. No, the budget is a living organism. It's working all the time. At the stage of writing the application, so we made certain assumptions. We had certain cost items, because if you have an outline of a budget in piece, you have the remuneration of the people, so the fees, you've got location, you've got props, etc., etc. So this was with the assumption of us having 15 shooting days, but nothing apart from that. I had no negotiated fees with the actors. We had some assumptions that were finally, they did not match the reality, because I didn't know that Andrzej Grabowski will play with us, and I'm really grateful to him that his remuneration was out of the market, really much lower than the market fees. And the other thing, a very important thing, the most important one that helped me negotiate, was that this script was great, that people wanted to take part in our movie, just like Tomek Woso, who at that time was a pretty recognized star. So these assumptions didn't match the reality. And later, after a deeper search of this space, I started to understand what is happening in this sort of preliminary budget, and how much I can manipulate it, how much money I have to leave for the later stages, what I cannot resign from. But I had to know. I sort of started from the assumption that what we can find by our sort of approach by creative work, creative management, here we cannot spend more money here. You know, when somebody said this costs 2,000, I took you know, I went on the internet and I was looking for the same thing costing 0 zlotys. I was not able to accept those costs because I saw what's happening in the budget. So I was also a line producer in a way that has to look at all those cost items, at all these cells. And Spatif, for example, renting out Spatif is extremely expensive. You know, negotiating that, you know, at the end of the day, the final budget, I knew that if somebody gives me a price, I need to negotiate it down, down by 50%. I knew that. Intuitively, I knew that. Thankfully, we didn't have many costs in terms of purchases. I said to Alicia, you know, the set designer, we have 5,000 zlotys for set design, and she had to work with this. If we rented things, if we borrowed things, she cared about them a lot. Everybody was very careful in using things. We felt this pressure of the budget. I I I believe that it's never good to buy, really, because you don't know. I don't know what my next project will be. I mean, I know now because I have several projects in the pipeline, but you might never know whether the clothes that you know, I know that in one of the productions it was due, maybe not because of the finances, the approach was the following: due to ecology, was finding, for example, clothes in second-hand stores. So it made the reuse of the clothes. It's always a question to what extent we can allow themselves to buy. Somebody told me one thing that I agree with: if the production have time, they don't have the money. If the production doesn't have time, they must have the money. So I did have this feeling that we were sort of moving forward, but there was a time to plan the moves, to limit the spending. I'm also a green filming proponent. I do not. I feel that many things related to green filming is very difficult to implement in production, but I do think that just like in my life, I'm trying not to buy unnecessary stuff, to be over consuming, and not to make things. And I'm trying to do things more from the point of view of sustainable life. I'm trying to do the same in filmmaking. If we do not need to buy, let's not buy. Let's use the things that are secondhand, for example, or rented. We borrowed a lot of things from my friends. My car is playing a role in our movie. We had to rent one car, unfortunately, which was very significant. We had to rent it. Okay, so we borrowed the car. Sorry, it was a sub from 1970s. It was one of the guy who was a nurse, and he was like a COVID protection specialist on our set. Do you have any other questions? Because you know what, we still have a few minutes to go. So I wanted to say one more thing. I had to add this picture because, you know, even though I went gray because of that movie, it occurred that the Songs of Love were premiered in Gdynia, and we won the micro budget competition. That was our first award. The film had great reception. On Wednesday, I remember I had 2 other projects in Gdynia. It was a 3D animation VR Cosmogonic, directed by my brother. We had pre-premiere in there, and the premiere was next year in France. And Adelina Borec's movie, a fantastic Ukrainian director, Eden House. I think we produced it for 5 years, a short. So these were like big events for me and very moving also, because after 3 years of really hard work and exerting ourselves, I meet with the crews of these 3 projects. So really, so we were living all together in a one big apartment that we rented. On Wednesday, the Songs of Love are entering the cinema, and then you get this fantastic wave of great reviews, of great enthusiasm, of really moving titles in headlines in newspapers saying, why isn't this film in the main competition? Andrzej Grabowski, who didn't come to Gdynia for many years because he was at odds with the festival, he came to our premiere, which is very important to us. And 3 days later, on Saturday, it occurs that we're winning the micro budget competition. The reception is so good that the phone is just glowing red because everybody's calling me. The distributors call me. We didn't have a distributors at that time. People want to meet me. They want to introduce the film to the cinemas on a large scale. I'm very stressed out. I got always prepared to. I was always getting myself prepared to produce things, but not to start the distribution because it was so far away from everything. And after, of course, negotiating, after an attempt to place ourselves in this whole world of production, I'm selecting the distributor. It was Gutek Film. And we planned the premiere for March 2022. This is the official poster of Gutek. And this is our artistic poster. It was a bit more even contrasted, but this artistic poster we took to Gdynia. It's interesting that within the budget you can employ your graphic. We could employ our graphic designer. Our graphic designer here, Mateusz Bienusa, who is responsible for the whole graphic preparation, including the font, including the text, and it was an incredible work when he was creating this inscription, because it was copied many times. It's handwork. He's a great artist. Okay, so now we have still 12 minutes, and I wanted to bring closer to you the information how to get the money for the micro budget from the micro budget. If you have any other questions to the Songs of Love, you can ask them now. I'm thinking. The film was micro budget, so the success was big. So the return on this investment was okay, at least, because suddenly it occurred that it's an upside to have the micro budget, but to see how it was functioning in the festival, I assume that if we take into account the return, it was bigger than you would think. Let me tell it like this: about 70,000 people went to see that movie in the cinemas. It's quite a decent result, but when it comes to about the return for the producer, the financial return for me, it is an let me be quite direct. My participation in the production of this movie is 5%, which means that the input of a Polish Film Institute was 85%. Polish TV gave 10% into the budget. So the money, it is related to the recoupment plan. The money returned the money to the co-producers, and at the moment we're paying back to the institute. So we could get our money back, but 600,000 has to be given back to the institute. And here we have a situation that every movie that will earn money, the budgets of a movie are big, like 5 to 9 million right now. Every movie that will earn money and achieves break even has to pay back to the institute. So we are not at the stage of a full payback. We won't probably will not pay the full amount to PISF, but we have to give back the money to PISF. So I got my share, my investment, but my return is quite meager at this stage. Well, it's a totally different discussion how the recoupment process looks like in Poland. What is included in the price of a ticket on the cinema? How much money is taken by half of the money earned always goes to the cinema operator. So this is a situation where it's pretty, it's pretty bitter for the producers that the return is pretty small. I need to settle the money with PIS for the next 5 years. But the TV, and this is quite a difficult thing, but the broadcaster is the owner of the movie forever. Because they're our co-producer. And we're still negotiating where this film could be sold on. It's a movie which certainly will enter the free TV, but the TV will not pay for the co-producing license. I'm really glad. I do have this feeling that the situation that we found ourselves in with other producers led to and maybe other political factors led to the producer who applies for microbudget has absolute freedom. What does it mean? That at the moment when the budget is 1 million zlotys and you immediately get financing from PISF, 900,000 zlotys up front, so the 100,000 on the part of the producer is his private business where he gets this money from. The contract does not assume any co-production. There are certain windows if the producer does not have the means, but you can also have your input in kind. So remember that out of 100,000 can be, out of 100,000, 95,000 can be an input in kind. So for example, a location, an apartment, an office, a car, a production car, etc. So we can get quite a big part of the financial input. Of course, if you have a production, we do have to have it secured. We also have to think about the VAT, because the PISF grant is net of VAT, and more people have their own sort of business registered, so you need to have money for the VAT, which of course then can be sort of returned to you, but it still has to be paid first. So the situation for the microbudget producers is fantastic. You have clear transparent situation, gives you full freedom in disposing of your movie and selling this movie. But how do you sell a movie and how to distribute it? It's a totally different topic. It's quite a big question. Well, we had the cost of a person. It was a small cost. We had the cost of a person who was operating in social media for the first 2 weeks of the movie before the festival, before Gdynia. But the cost of P&A, the cost of distribution, I agreed them with the distributor. So this was also my part of negotiation. How much of a print advertising costs on the part of distributor can be devoted to that movie. We didn't have a big movie, a big cost, but it was very effective. Well, small. I think it was proportional towards the budget, because remember that P&A costs from the very outset are paid from the revenues for distributor. So nobody earns money in the beginning, but the distributor gets back the cost that they spent on P&A. Well, are documents in microbudget? No. I think that I hope that this year the question of the budget will be raised, but it's still 900,000. We still have a few minutes. Let's start from the end. So this is what, as you can see here, this is what the schedule for the next year looks like. 2 days ago, the gate closed for the selection of an artistic film in microbudget. So somebody who didn't graduate from film school has to submit such documents to the Film Institute to get a chance to get the confirmation that you can submit the application. Starting from the 6th to 10th of November, you have selection of applications per se. In December, the decision about providing the financing. Until February, signing a contract with the institute. So imagine a situation that, according to this timetable, that until that by February you have to prepare all the documents for the contract. So you have to have a closed script, a budget that you have at that stage. Let's not fool ourselves. It will not be an advanced stage of that budget, but to what extent you will be able to verify that. Additional materials. All the materials are listed on the website of the Polish Film Institute, but also there's also a timetable of the production, and possibly also contracts with the director, with the scriptwriter, and probably with the set designer. You have to submit 3 contracts to PIS at minimum. So they also have to be negotiated and signed. And the preparation of the master copy should be by February 2025, so 2 years. And if you have that deadline included in the contract, please negotiate this. This is my advice, because we have to submit theoretically the movie to a festival in Gdynia, so September. February 2025 is a very early date, and because if you will be shooting in August 2024, there's a slight chance you will be able to get the master copy by the February. It's better to negotiate with an institute to make it more rational. So, for example, August. So not to negotiate annexes to this contract on end, because then later it's you have to ask the director for the consent to to annex the agreement, etc. So the main information about this priority is it's a project dedicated to debuting directors. Only fiction movies. 90% of the budget you get from the Polish Film Institute. The applicant can have a minimum of 10% share in the budget. If I understand this well, that means that this budget can be more than 1 million. If it's said that you're obliged to submit their own share in minimum 10%, that's very interesting. I didn't notice that before. But this is how I interpret this, that this budget does not have to have the maximum threshold of 1 million. Wow. I don't know, but I'm not sure. I think there must be a million, I think, but this is a very interesting information. But it assumes that there's an assumption of no additional investors. So we ourselves have to, but I think I do expect that if at this stage we will find a broadcaster or a distributor who would want to buy the license from us or would want to give us LG, which will enter our portfolio, it might be possible in this situation. This is about the portfolio of the director. We did not add any pieces of our portfolio. It was very funny because Tomek was never on the film set before. I mean, I think he was working on one scene for one day in the Vida school, so he could not attach anything. He didn't have a musical video on his account, but we attached this one scene. I mean, we showed this scene to the committee, and the only person there were two people from the crew. There was Justyna and Weronika Bilska. The selection committee is maximum 9 experts. We had Janek Komasa among others in our committee. Of course, the PISF director representatives, somebody from the TV broadcasting company. And the other stage, after the first formal stage, is a 10-minute presentation in a meeting with the committee, which takes place online. And we also had to present physically to PISF. And here we have the final slide to encourage you. If you have graduated from a film school at this stage and you would like to apply to PISF for a microbudget, you have a time until the 10th of November. Thank you very much. Unless you have any questions, this is the end of my presentation. Do you know budgets for documentaries? Yes, the institute is a place where you can apply for financing for a documentary. And I know that this year the limit is increased because the development is 200,000 for a documentary. So the Munch Studio. They also have financing for your first documentary. The question to you, the first stage of document verification, which documents we need from the point of director or the budget? Should it be a vision or? Well, the first stage, if you didn't graduate from a film school, the first stage is only for the people who didn't graduate from the film school. Only. You might check that too, but it's written here that yes, the decision. If you've graduated from the film school, you do not have to to participate in that stage. You just apply for the production. I don't think anything changed. The question is, what does it look like in the case of artistic movies? You have to then, until the 15th of October, 2 days ago, you have to submit an application to PISF that you're a graduate from another artistic school, that you're active in the industry, or write anything that will allow your producer to submit the application to the PISF Institute by the 15th of November. Do you have any other? There are no micro budgets for short forms, but I would like to remind you that there is a financing for PISF for short forms. In such cases, please remember always 300,000. This is the amount you can get. It's not 100% of the whole budget. The institute always, apart from the situations like here that it has 90%, but the institute always has the input that as a 50% in a 50% of a budget, and you cannot go beyond that, exceed that part. Great. I see there are no more questions. I hope I didn't bore you to death. And I wish you success, and hopefully you will want to take part in that program. I'm very happy that I did that. It was extremely difficult, but very gratifying. It was very satisfying. And I think it's a program that gives an opportunity to young producers and beginning authors. Thank you and have a nice day.